when that movie came out. Was anything cut from that film?
The studio actually legally couldn't trim it. They couldn't cut anything.
Blazing Saddles star. For half a century, it's been a comedy legend. It's so bold and hilariously satirical, you just know it could never be made today. You've probably seen it more times than you can count. You know the lines by heart. The sheriff is near. Somebody's gotta go back and get a. You know the rest. You've howled at the campfire scene, cheered for Sheriff Bart, and just admired the flat-out genius of Mel Brooks, but what if I told you that for 50 years, a huge, glaring mistake has been hiding in plain sight during the movie's wildest scene? What if I told you millions of us, die-hard fans included, have watched this scene over and over, and completely missed it? Today, we're putting the climax of Blazing Saddles under the microscope to expose the blooper that, once you see it, you'll never be able to unsee. Get ready to look at this comedy masterpiece in a whole new way. Before we get to the mistake, you have to understand why Blazing Saddles isn't just another movie. To really appreciate the slip-up, you have to appreciate the miracle that is the film itself. Released in 1974, it wasn't just a comedy, it was a cultural bombshell. The premise alone was insane. In 1874, a black sheriff is sent to an all-white, super racist western town. He isn't sent to bring justice, but as part of a crooked scheme by Attorney General Hedley Lamarr to scare the townspeople off their land so he can build a railroad. The idea came from a young writer named Andrew Bergman, who had an outline called Tex X, a nod to Malcolm X. The whole point was to drop a modern, sharp black man into the myth of the Old West and just see what happens. When the project got to Mel Brooks, he was, as he put it, absolutely broke. His last film, The Producers, was a critical hit but not a box office one. With a baby on the way with his wife, and Bancroft, Brooks needed a win. He saw Bergman's outline as a chance to do something revolutionary, to completely tear down the clichés of the American Western. Those old Westerns were always so clean and noble. Their heroes were tough, the townspeople were good, and the ugly reality of the frontier, especially racism, was pretty much ignored. Brooks decided to take a comedic blowtorch to that whole fantasy. To pull it off, he put together a writer's room that was as chaotic and brilliant as the movie they were creating. It had Bergman, Norman Steinberg, Alan Uger, and, most importantly, the force of nature that was Richard Pryor. Brooks knew if he was going to make fun of racism, he needed a real voice. Pryor, who Brooks called the greatest stand-up comedian who ever lived, was that voice. The room was a mess of creative energy, fueled by arguments, laughter, and Pryor's love for Remy Martin. As Brooks put it, there were 5 of us all yelling loudly for our ideas to be put into the movie. Pryor was fearless. He pushed the white writers to use the racial slurs that were true to the time, arguing they were the only way. To show how ridiculous racism really is, the script they produced was like nothing Hollywood had ever seen. It was packed with jokes that broke the fourth wall, stuff that was happening in the wrong time period, and gags that were considered way out of line. The famous campfire scene, with its beautiful symphony of farts, was a direct attack on the clean cowboy myth. Brooks famously said, "Listen, I've watched cowboys eating beans all my life, and they should be farting by now." When they handed the script to Warner Brothers, the execs were horrified. After a screening for the suits, they came back with a long list of cuts. The farting scene had to go. You couldn't punch a horse. You couldn't hit an old lady. And you absolutely could not use the N-word. Brooks figured if he made all the cuts, the movie would be about 15 minutes long. He wrote down all their notes, and as soon as they left, he crumpled up the paper and threw it in the trash. It was a huge gamble. But John Calley, the studio president, had a moment of clarity. He told Brooks, "Look Mel, if you're going to go up to the bell, ring it." He talked the studio into giving the film a small test release in New York, LA, and Chicago. The gamble paid off, big time. Audiences loved it. They were starving for something this honest and funny. The film the studio wanted to bury became its biggest hit that summer, raking in almost $120 million on a tiny $2.6 million budget. The casting was its own series of lucky breaks and near disasters. Richard Pryor was Brooks's only choice for Sheriff Bart. But the studio said no, claiming Pryor's controversial stand-up and drug use made him uninsurable. Pryor graciously stayed on as a writer, and after seeing dozens of actors, the part went to the impossibly cool Cleveland Little. Pryor himself approved, supposedly saying of Little, "This guy is so black he'll scare the whole town." For the Waco Kid, Brooks first went to the cowboy himself, John Wayne. Wayne loved the script but turned it down, saying it was just too blue for his image, though he promised he'd be the first in line to see it. The role then went to Gig Young, but on the very first day of shooting, Young started suffering from severe alcohol withdrawal. Brooks had to shut down production and quickly find a new actor. He called his friend Gene Wilder, who flew out immediately, and one of the greatest comedy duos in cinema was born. The chemistry between Cleveland Little and Gene Wilder became the film's heart and soul. Understanding how wild the production was is key to understanding how a huge mistake could slip through. Mel Brooks's style on Blazing Saddles wasn't just about filming the script, it was about creating an atmosphere where comedy could strike like lightning. The set was famously a riot, with the cast and crew constantly breaking into laughter and ruining takes. Brooks had to come up with a way to keep things moving. He went to Woolworth's, bought 1,000 white handkerchiefs, and gave one to everyone. The rule was simple: if you felt a laugh coming, you had to shove the handkerchief in your mouth. This wasn't just to keep the sound clean, it was how Brooks knew if a joke was working. He said, "Anytime I wasn't sure whether a scene was working or not, I'd look over my shoulder, and if I saw a lot of white handkerchiefs, I'd know it was funny." This whole environment was built on improvisation. Brooks encouraged his actors, especially talents like Harvey Korman, Madeline Kahn, and of course, Gene Wilder, to go off script. He wanted them to find the comedy in the moment. The best example of this is in one of the film's most loved scenes. After Sheriff Bart gets hit with a wave of racism from the Rock Ridge folks, he's sitting in his office looking defeated. The Waco Kid comes over to cheer him up. The script had the basic lines, but what happened next was pure Gene Wilder. He starts a monologue, trying to explain the townspeople. "You've got to remember that these are just simple farmers," he says, in that signature gentle voice. "These are people of the land. The common clay of the New West." He pauses, looks Bart right in the eye, and delivers the unscripted punchline, "You know, morons." If you watch Cleveland Little's face, that's not an actor playing a character. That's a man trying his hardest not to burst out laughing. He turns his head, his shoulders shake, but you can see that genuine smile break through. That laugh was a mistake. It was a blown take. But Brooks saw the magic in it. He saw the real friendship between the two men shining through, and he kept it in the movie. This kind of thing happened all the time. The whole movie is full of these happy accidents. When Bart holds himself hostage to escape the mob, a lot of Cleveland Little's frantic dialogue was made up on the spot. Gene Wilder's stunned reaction is 100% real. Again, Brooks saw the comedy gold in it and kept the take. This way of directing creates a feeling of barely controlled chaos, where anything can happen. The film's entire structure leans into this, ending with the ultimate takedown of movies themselves, breaking the fourth wall. The final fight in Rock Ridge doesn't just stay in Rock Ridge. It literally spills over onto the next soundstage at Warner Brothers, right into the middle of a cheesy musical. The brawl then crashes through the studio lunchroom and out onto the streets of Burbank. This wasn't just a gag, it was the final point of the whole movie. Brooks was shouting that the romantic Old West was just as fake as the sets it was filmed on. This wild, wall-breaking finale is a masterpiece of comedic anarchy. It moves at a dizzying pace, with jokes flying at you from all sides. It's so fast, so chaotic, and so funny that it's the perfect cover for a mistake. A huge one. One that's been sitting right there, for 50 years, okay, here we are. The grand finale. The part where the movie just completely falls apart on purpose. Hedley Lamar's army of thugs storms Rock Ridge, only to find out it's a total fake, just a bunch of cardboard buildings meant to lure them into a trap. Sheriff Bart, the Waco Kid, and the townspeople launch their attack. What follows is one of the most ridiculous and hilarious fight scenes ever filmed. It's a storm of slapstick, explosions, and pure chaos. And right in the middle of it all is our blooper. Let's set the scene. The bad guys, led by the always frustrated Taggart, played by the great Slim Pickens, are tearing through the fake town. In a show of pure anger, Taggart walks up to one of the buildings. It's a storefront with a sign that clearly says leather and saddlery. He hauls back and kicks the whole facade. Just like you'd expect from a cheap movie prop, the entire front of the building crashes down flat on the ground. Taggart stands there, proud of his work. The camera then cuts away to other parts of the fight. Now, pay close attention. This is the moment. For decades, we've all been swept up in the craziness. But if you pause and rewind, you'll see it. A little later in the fight, as the chaos hits its peak and dynamite is going off everywhere, we get another wide shot of the street. And there, in the background, plain as day, is the leather and saddlery shop. It's standing up again. The facade that Taggart kicked down just moments before is magically back upright, perfectly fine, as if nothing happened. It's not a different building. It's the exact same one, risen from the dead. And then, to make the mistake even funnier, this magically restored building is promptly blown to bits by dynamite. It gets destroyed twice, in two different ways, in the same scene. So how could a huge continuity error like this make it into the final film? The answer is in the scene itself. The pacing is insane on purpose. Mel Brooks is throwing so many gags at you that you don't have time to sweat the details. You're laughing at one thing, and your eyes are already being pulled to the next joke. The background just becomes part of the scenery. It's a brilliant bit of comedic misdirection, whether he meant it or not. The editors, who were probably juggling tons of footage from different cameras to piece this scene together, were focused on the rhythm of the comedy, not a background building. For years, it went largely unnoticed. But now, in the age of HD streaming, pause buttons, and internet forums, no mistake stays hidden forever. The resurrecting leather shop is now a fun piece of trivia that sends fans rushing back to their copy of the film to see it for themselves. It doesn't ruin the movie's genius at all, it just adds to its legend. It proves that even a classic we've analyzed for half a century can still have a few surprises. Now that you know about that one, you might be wondering what other mistakes are hiding in Blazing Saddles. The resurrecting leather shop is the biggest, but it's not the only goof that made it past the editors. The movie is full of little continuity errors and blunders that just make it more charming. Let's start with another continuity mistake, this time involving a piece of bread. In one night scene, a character is holding a piece of bread, and he clearly drops it. In the very next shot, a split second later, the bread is magically back in his hand. Then, in the next shot, his hands are empty again. It's a tiny, blink-can-you'll-miss-it error, another example of how the editors chose comedic timing over perfect continuity. There's more. Think about Sheriff Bart's big entrance into Rock Ridge. He's wearing his shiny new sheriff's badge as he rides into town. But according to the story, he isn't supposed to get the badge until after he gets there and has his first run-in with the townspeople. He's wearing the badge of office before he even has the office. During the food fight in the commissary, when Taggart gets thrown onto a counter, food gets slopped all over his stomach. A second later, as he slides down the counter, the food has somehow moved up to his chest. Even Mongo isn't safe. When he rides into town on his steer, the metal cuff on his neck chain flips its orientation between shots. Then there are the moments where you can see the movie magic. When Bart and his friends are escaping on a handcart, look closely at the tracks. In one quick shot, you can see a thin black cable pulling the cart along. And when Bart walks into the saloon to deliver the candygram for Mongo, his shadow falls on the flat, painted backdrop of the saloon wall, not a real wall, breaking the illusion for just a second. During Madeline Kahn's amazing "I'm Tired" performance, one of the German soldiers gets a little too into it. He throws his rifle down, and it accidentally hits and breaks one of the stage lights. You can even hear the pop, and of course, some mistakes were just unscripted genius. We already talked about Gene Wilder's "morons" line, but the movie is full of little character breaks like that. During the huge final fight scene, if you watch the extras, you can sometimes spot them slowing to a walk, probably thinking they're off camera, before realizing they're still in the shot and starting to run again. So, the movie is full of mistakes. Does any of it matter? Does it make Blazing Saddles any less of a comedy masterpiece? Absolutely not. In fact, you could argue these imperfections are a core part of the film's chaotic soul. They're flaws that accidentally reveal the spirit of the movie. Blazing Saddles is a movie about taking things apart. It takes apart the myths of the West. It takes apart the rules of Hollywood movies. It takes apart bigotry by showing how stupid it is. The final fourth wall-shattering brawl is the clearest example, but the entire film is doing this. The bloopers, in their own little way, help with that. A visible cable, a shadow on a painted wall, a building that gets kicked down and then stands back up, these are tiny little rips in the movie's reality. They remind us that what we're watching isn't real. It's a construct, just like the romantic Old West that Brooks was having so much fun destroying. The film's love of chaos, from the writer's room to the improv on set, meant that perfection was never the goal. The goal was to be funny, to be bold, and to be honest. If a take was funnier because an actor really laughed, it stayed in. If a scene had more energy despite a continuity error in the background, the energy won. Brooks chose laughter over logic, and the movie is better for it. These mistakes make the film feel more human. They're the fingerprints of the people who made it, echoes of a messy and joyful creative process. Finding them today isn't about pointing out flaws, it's like being let in on a secret, giving us a new reason to admire a film we already love. The timeless charm of Blazing Saddles comes from its brilliant script, its perfect cast, and its fearless commentary. But it also comes from its glorious, unapologetic, and hilarious imperfections. What do you think? Does finding a mistake like this change how you see the movie, or does it just make it more fun? And what's the biggest movie blooper you've ever spotted that nobody else seems to talk about? Let us know in the comments. And if you like taking a closer look at your favorite classic films, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. For 50 years, Blazing Saddles has been more than a movie. It's the standard for bold comedy and a masterclass in satire. It's a film that so many of us feel like we know inside and out. And yet, as we saw today, it still has secrets to share. The case of the resurrecting leather shop is a hilarious reminder that no film is perfect, and sometimes, the imperfections are part of the magic. It's a flaw born from the very same chaos that makes the movie a classic. So the next time you watch Mel Brooks's masterpiece, keep your eyes peeled. You might be the one to spot the next big blooper that everyone else has missed for the last 50 years.